does raise a bit of doubt with their performances over the last couple of weeks or so. They lost to Everton with a last minute goal, if I'm not mistaken. And the week before that, I think they drew.
Okay, still on the top five discussion. Uh, Now let's talk about the top five situation in the EPL. Yinka just confirmed to us earlier that the fifth Champions League slot is going definitely to the EPL and to the Spanish La Liga. So uh, we are going to have five teams definitely from these two leagues. Now in England, for whatever reason, as discussed last week, Arsenal have decided to join in the top five race. And currently, after playing all outstanding matches, Newcastle are now third on the table. They are 4 points behind Arsenal. And we have Manchester City in fifth. Uh, who's the fourth? Who's the fourth
Nottingham
place team?
Forest.
Forest.
Not
Nottingham
okay.
Forest.
Nottingham Forest in fourth.
Yes.
Now in fourth. Nottingham Forest lost to Everton last week, and that has put their qualification in jeopardy. Now,
Does it?
Everton is going from one club to another and performing wonders. This week, Everton would host Manchester City. Uh, Fulham will host Chelsea. Newcastle and Aston Villa will face off. Uh, Tottenham Hotspur will host Forest, while Arsenal plays Ipswich. Ordinarily, you would expect Arsenal to beat Ipswich, but then the remaining fixtures uh, have telling consequences on the table because Chelsea are just a point behind Manchester City. Yinka, I know you do not consider Chelsea uh, one of the teams that will finish in the top five, but considering the events of the last 2 weeks, do you see Nottingham Forest slipping further down the table?
Well, I did have Nottingham Forest as one of the teams to qualify for the Champions League. But yes, it does raise a bit of doubt with their performances over the last couple of weeks or so. They lost to Everton with a last minute goal, if I'm not mistaken. And the week before that, I think they drew. I can't remember who they drew to again. I think it was a draw at. No, they lost to Forest as well. They lost to Forest as well. I've just checked that. So they're not particularly in good form. The pressure might be affecting them. That's a possibility. But I still think that they can do just enough to qualify. And the reason I think that is because I still do not think that Chelsea have what it takes to qualify. Um, Chelsea have quite, a quite tricky fixture. Their fixtures are tricky, um, from now to the end of the season. And going by how they've been playing recently, it's hard to guarantee that, or it's hard to predict for sure that they are definitely going to win. So I stick with my prediction. I think that Nottingham Forest will do just enough to stay in the top five. Chelsea will lose out, and Newcastle and Man City will make it. But obviously, Everton, it looks like Everton is putting themselves in a position to play spoiler for all of this team.
Ahmed,
Well,
Everton, Manchester City.
have you considered Nottingham Forest next couple of fixtures?
Yeah, I know. I said that Nottingham Forest
I
have
can help you.
very tricky fixtures.
They are facing
Um,
they are facing Tottenham next. After that, they are
Mm-hmm.
facing Man City, then
No,
Brentford.
no. They are not playing City again. They are playing Brentford at home after
Yes.
Spurs.
Okay.
Then they are playing Crystal Palace away.
Okay.
Not Leicester City at home.
They still have a tie
West
against
Ham,
Chelsea as well.
West Ham away, and Chelsea at home on March the 30th, which might be a very crucial fixture considering this top five race. But
Well,
Ahmed, my question to you is Everton's Manchester City.
So sorry, before I made answers, I also want to point out that even if Nottingham does not make it, I still do not think Chelsea will make it. I think it will be Aston Villa instead. I'm just putting that out there.
But you
uh,
guys think Aston Villa have the toughest of the fixtures
Well, we'll see.
Chelsea fixtures are also tough. They are facing
because
Liverpool. They are facing I think City,
Newcastle, they are playing facing Newcastle,
Newcastle.
they
They
are
are
facing
facing
Everton.
City. They are facing Man
They
U.
are, well,
Well, that's one.
Aston
Chelsea will
Villa
be
are facing
beaten in ways
Newcastle
that they've never been beaten before over the last this last five
You never can tell. Cole
over
Palmer
these last
must
five
come bold
games.
again.
Cole Palmer is on holiday. Oh.
Because
He's that
So,
hot.
as
He's
far as I'm
coming bold.
concerned, their mind is
mhm,
on Europa League now. Let's get sorry, Conference League
Conference
now.
League.
Conference League.
Let's get
The
Conference
one they
League.
lost today.
Let's they already did the job in the first leg. Almost like what Arsenal did. Even if Arsenal had lost 2-1, at the sorry, if Arsenal had lost 2-1 at the Bernabeu, rather, they would still
They
have
will still have
qualified.
qualified.
So
But they
and
did not.
but they did not lose, obviously. But obviously the Conference League is a bit tough, especially because you still have Fiorentina and I think Betis.
Tough.
But I think that Chelsea are going to focus more on that competition than the Premier League. With the fixtures that they have, man, if they get 3 wins out of these games, I'll be very, very surprised. 3 wins, so out
Wow.
of five.
Wow.
That many out of
Ahmed,
six.
Everton City. Any,
Wow.
I can't even predict any Everton related match now
Da-
because
David
they turn
Moyes.
up, they turn up as if
That's the name.
they are on drugs.
David Moyes
And
versus City. I'll put it that way. Not Everton versus City. David Moyes versus because he has come in and really changed changed fortunes of Everton. They were really struggling before his appointment. Then he came in. They are a completely different side right now compared to the version we saw earlier in the season. They are going to every game with confidence. Be it a big. In fact, they started with the Merseyside derby
Liverpool,
win. They started with that. Well, no, was it a win
no,
or
they
late
drew.
draw?
They
A
drew
late
For the
draw.
draw.
2-2.
Then the second leg encounter, they lost that by a goal to no by a slim margin. But they've been really impressive. I wasn't surprised with their win against Nottingham Forest. Though they won via a defensive error late in the
Smash
game.
and grab.
But regardless, if you had seen the total duration of that game, they were really the better side. Created plethora of chances that were not converted. But against this Man City side, I believe and they will be in Merseyside where their supporters would have their backs. So I don't see Man City going there to win that fixture. I am more or less inclining towards a draw. So because they've been good, Ndiaye, Beto, Dukuri, they've all been very good. They've all been very good. I expect them to do what they've been doing and throw shocks in the spanner, throw spanner in the wheels of Man City. I expect a draw from that encounter.
You got your opinion.
But I also think it's going to be very tough. Um, Everton are, riding a good wave at the moment. The only concern I have about Everton now is that they are currently on 38 points, which means that more or less relegation has been avoided. So there's really not much to play for anymore. So I don't know if they will still be as motivated as they've been over the last, say, 6, 7 weeks. But if they are just as motivated, then I do not see City getting anything. Obviously, City have more quality, City does need that win because a loss in that game, could also throw a bit of spanner in their works as well. But
Even a
Everton's form
draw.
at the moment, even a drop, but Everton's form at the moment, man, and without Haaland as well, I don't think Haaland will be available for that game.
He won't be
Even if
available.
Mahmoud,
Haaland was present,
it
because
would still be
recently
difficult.
this City side, if against any compact looking side, they've actually struggled. And Everton is one compact side. If you are to look at what they've been doing in recent times, that would this is actually a very tough job for City.
Very tough.
Well,
That's not to
City's
say that they will. It's certain that they will lose, but if they win, they will come out with that game, with
Definitely.
blood on the field because Everton is going to give them a very tough game.
uh, interesting round of fixtures. The table might take some swapping after this round of fixtures. We have Aston Villa hosting Newcastle. Newcastle are in wicked form. Goals are coming in from every angle: attack, midfield, defenders are scoring, and they've smelled blood, and they are just
Going for the
they are
kill.
attacking any. They are going for the kill.
Villa might
Uh
beat them.
what did you say?
I said Villa might beat them though.
Yeah, yeah, Via
Yeah,
might beat them. Via might
that
beat
game
them.
could
Via
go
is
either way.
Via is another good side. Via is another good side. Uh, I want us to have a discussion about two things. The first, it's a personal. I would say it will be much of a personal opinion, and the question is very simple. In the game of football, what position do you consider the hardest to play?
Hear you
What
loud and clear.
position do you consider the hardest to play? Crespo, can you hear me? Okay.
Okay?
Please
I guess
tell
I can
us
go first.
what position do you consider
Okay, fine, I can
on the
go first.
field of play is the hardest to play?
Okay, so okay. Three of
Crespo,
my
who,
best
who,
defensive midfielders.
who is your
Okay, Pillow
give me
one
three
as
of
a
your best
pillow.
defensive midfielders of all time?
Yes. Um uh Makelele of Chelsea. Or yeah, Makelele. Sorry, not Makelele.
Okay.
Kante. Kante. Yes. Former Chelsea player. And then lastly, I see the role
Kante.
Charlone is playing for Inter
Okay.
right now. It's more like a defensive midfield, kind of, because he links the defense to the midfield, and then sometimes he can just link from the defense up or to maybe either Marcos or Lautaro. So I see the job of doing in fact, he's at his prime as an Inter player being deployed in that defensive midfield role. So, in fact, ever since he moved to Inter, he has grown, he has developed so much, he has matured so much in that role. That was not the role that he was deployed when he was in Milan. Yeah, so yes, Telulu, I admire him for far, even though he's a right in a rival team. He's someone who I appreciate and I admire his job for Inter. You can see whenever Telulu is not fit, whenever he's not in the game, Inter tends to struggle. Whenever he's fit, Inter always shines and
Okay.
go as far as winning the.
Well, is Aslan that is understudy, so it's normal for them to struggle. But not to get distracted. For a defensive midfielder, I'm just trying to uh, dissect your
Okay,
choice.
the technical
What
ability, the
technical
one I consider
ability
to
do
be
you
the most.
consider the most important for a
If
defensive
we check the
midfielder?
technical abilities of a player like Pino, for example, who
Pello is a. Okay, just for clarification for our viewers, in Italy we call Pello a regista. That is like a deep lying playmaker.
That's not
So
a defensive
Pello is
midfielder.
not the orthodox ball winning, tackling defensive midfielder. So, okay,
I
Crespo, back
think
to you.
Crespo is mixing up roles and positions in this discourse. He might be positioned in front of the defense, but he's never a defensive midfielder. He's just a register, like you mentioned. He's a deep line playmaker. So I'm not sure Pelo is a good example in a discourse that has to do with defensive midfielders. So, but
Ahmed, I don't agree.
positionally, he plays in that position. But role wise, there's what we call role. There's what we call position.
Of
You
course.
understand?
Ahmed, he plays in
But
that
I also think
position.
that there are players that play as DMs and registers. And I think that Akan Chanaloglu is one of them.
I hate
Pele is not
Akan
one of them.
enters
That
defensive
was why I said
midfielder
Pele is not one
and
of
also the
them. That was why
register.
I said we are mixing up the position and role thing here. They tend to be clashes in this discourse, but once Pele is
But
generally one.
ultimately, he's talking about the man in front of the defense. Whether
Do you know
he's
how
a
many rows
Kante
is in? Do you know how many rows is in front of the defense? Let's start from that. There are more than one rows. There are more than two in front of the
position,
defense.
Ahmed, we are talking about position now, not
Yeah,
rules.
that singular position in front, that singular man in front of the position. There are numerous roles that can fit that position. It is not
In a
really discussed
generic
that.
sense, in a
that
But
generic
I think that
sense,
what Crespo is saying is that whoever sits in front of the defense is the
defense
most important person for him, at least.
for him,
Plays
as
the
far as
Yeah,
he's
hardest role.
concerned.
And that's what he
that's
refers
better
to as the
explained.
defensive midfielder.
That's better
Uh-huh. And
explained.
in a general football sense, we can correct me if I'm wrong. The man in front of defense generally is called a defensive midfielder. It is application of roles in different tactical countries that gives birth to things like register, deep lying playmaker. But
Generally, it's called the number six, not the defensive midfielder.
Ahmed, that's why you're going last. Inka,
All right. So personally, I feel like the hardest role to play, or the player that has the hardest job in a team, would be the player that sets the tempo for that team. Now, hold on,
Inka,
hold on,
you want to play me while you with this your answer.
hold on. I'm
But
getting somewhere now. I think it's the
continue.
player that sets the tempo for the team. It could be, and in most cases, it's usually a midfielder. Now, in most cases, it's usually a central midfielder. Obviously, we have certain cases where you have the register setting tempo, or you have the trequartista setting tempo for the team, or the central attacking midfielder. But the player that links everybody, that makes sure that everybody ticks, for me, has the hardest job in mid, and in most cases is the central midfielder. In Italy we call it centro campista or mezzala. In certain cases, sometimes it's usually the box to box midfielder as well. Because obviously they have to perform defensive roles, they have to perform attacking roles in certain cases as well, and then sometimes they have to link both and then run from one end to another. If I'm to pick, if I'm to give examples in modern day football, I would say a Barella, for example, um, a Luka Modric, for example. There are different types of players. If you look at it, Luka Modric and Barella are different, but they set the tempo for their teams. So for me, that's the hardest job as far as I'm concerned, because if that player is off, then there's a very big possibility that everybody else will be off. So
Okay,
that's my response.
okay, Inka, let me counter with uh, a different tactical school of thought. And I want to use a peculiar coach now. That is Jurgen Klopp. In a Jurgen Klopp system, there's really not one particular player that dictates this kind of play. It's a lot of vertical passes, straight passes. So you really can't, you really don't have that kind of that player that is ultra dominating in terms of dictating play.
Yeah, I understand the point that you're trying to make. But although they did have players like Fabinho and the likes that were quite good in dictating tempo, but I get the point that you're trying to make. And I think it's because of the style that Jurgen Klopp plays. They deal a lot with turnovers, and
Yeah,
they
you're
try
right.
to, they try to win the ball high up the field as much as possible, and then turn it over to punish you as quick as possible as well. And because of that, they do not really do much of ball circulation in midfield. At least obviously you can find one or two games or a few games where they settle down to try to play to break down opponents. But generally in Jurgen Klopp's system, they try
They
to.
implement the 8-second rule.
Exactly. They try to win it very high up the field and then turn it over immediately to try to create a chance. So, and like I usually say in football, for every rule, there's an exception. So, even though
Sure.
we have generally, midfielders set tempo and the like, there would always be exceptions like Jurgen Klopp and say,
Yeah.
Zdenek Zenman. I don't know if anybody,
Okay,
Zeman
Zenman.
or is it Zenman?
Yeah,
I don't know if
Zenman.
anybody still remembers that coach, that man that's always smoking on the touchline.
Former
You know,
Roma.
former Roma, Pescara, and the like. His system too was almost similar to Jurgen Klopp, so because he likes to win the ball, he liked to play this ultra attacking system as well. Although he had registers as well that were good, like Verratti and who was his register at Roma at the time. But still, he liked to win the ball quickly and then turn it over. So there are obviously exceptions, but generally, players that set the tempo for me are players that are quite, important for every team.
Ahmed,
Yeah, for me, um, I can't single out a particular role, but I have two roles in mind. Reason being that probably because I've actively played in those positions before, and I know what it feels like, and I've seen um, professionals um, do it also. So just like Inka said, but not exactly the way he puts it. I think the central midfielder, not the defensive midfielder this time around, has a very tough job. That is one role that is very tough. Tough in the sense that it is usually given to the player with the best of intelligence, because you have to be up there as far as decision making is concerned. In fact, you are the coach on the field. You are expected to study your opponents, know their weakness. You understand, okay, our opponents, are they weak aerially? So you dictate the game based on whatever observations you must have had on the field. So this role, you do a lot of attacking play. At the same time, you are meant to contribute with your defensive quota. If you are not up to the task, your attack would suffer for it, because you are the central midfielder. You are the link between the defense and the attack. So that is one role that is tough. But in addition to that, I think the central back position
Mm.
is one role that is brutal. Brutal in the sense that we've seen a lot of strikers go away with bad days. I've seen Haaland on numerous occasions miss plethora of chances, but he's caught up a tap in, and Haaland has saved the day. But in this sense, a defender might have done a very excellent job throughout the course of the game, and one error would be the reason why everything he must have done is thrown away. You would hear statements like, um, Pavlovic has killed us. We made such an expression when we were discussing the Everton Nottingham Forest game. It was one costly Murillo error at the end. And if you look at the course of the game, Nottingham Forest attackers must have missed plethora of chances, but we hardly make reference to such scenarios. But one central defender error is always remembered. So that is one role that is not forgiven. And if luck doesn't work in your favor, you could end up in systems where you are actually very exposed. So this is one role that sometimes your ability is not enough, because you could be in a Milan system
Yeah.
and you are always exposed. This time around, it is not down to your ability alone. You would suffer for it. So it takes people who understand football to
Mm,
actually look the bigger picture and understand that this is a system malfunction, not that our central defender is bad.
mm.
So that is why I think a central defender's job is equally as tough as a central midfielder's job. So I would go with both positions.
Well, there's a reason why they say that goals win you the match, the defense wins you the championship, and the your defense line must be in sync at all times. And you know, one of the most impressive defensive feats in modern day European football is Jose Mourinho's Chelsea's side conceding just 15 goals in 38 matches. You know, there's
Yeah,
always a lot of noise about Arsenal's invisible team,
on point.
and that Chelsea's team does not get enough credit. That team was defensively, they were masterclass defensively. So, Ahmed, before I move to the next discussion, central midfielders, give us two or three players that fit your description of what you said. Uh, in centre back too, maybe two or three players that if
I
you
will
if you were
start.
to if you were to establish a school now and you want to start teaching children how to be a midfielder and how to be a centre back, those
You know,
players will be your reference point.
I will
You
start with
can
my
mention, you
all-time
can start with
favorite,
Pavlovich.
Clarence Seedorf. He
Okay,
was, well, he was one person I really loved, and Zinedine Zidane. Uh, that's my that's my second option, and for my third option, I would more okay. I would say Luka Modric. Those are the best of the best when it comes to that central midfield position. And talking of defenders, um, I would Nesta. I'll start with Nesta. Um, he's someone who was very good with reading the game, winning the ball. There's a difference between making fouls and
he
winning the
can
ball.
pass out from the back. He
Nesta
can
was
throw long pass. He can.
Nesta was
Nesta was
was
majestic, man. Nesta
close to
was
perfect.
majestic.
And secondly, I would I'm trying as much as possible not to say Maldini, because it is looking like a Milan.
really,
It is looking like a list of Milan defenders. So all right, I would go with Chiellini too. I would go with Chiellini. Yeah, I'll go with Chiellini. And lastly, okay, Maldini. Let me end it there.
Uh, Last question on this topic for Yinka. Based on your answer, Yinka, what technical ability would you say is the most important for a player that controls the game?
Yeah, I think it would be two. Obviously, you need to have quite a lot of attributes, but I think that the two that would stand out for me the most would be one, being in control of the ball at all times, and the number two is having an awareness of what's going on the pitch
Ability to read the game.
at all
Very
times.
important.
So
Situational awareness.
if you do not have that awareness and you're not in control of the ball, then I think there's no point playing that role because, I mean, how do you dictate the game without awareness of what's going on? It just doesn't
Except
make
you are
sense.
General Musa.
It just doesn't make sense. So you also have to be in control of the ball because And when I say control of the ball, when someone mentions control, most people can mistake it for having a good first touch and the likes. But having control of the ball basically means
Ball mastery.
knowing when to, knowing when to take a first one touch pass, or knowing when to take a first
I
touch
think
or
we've
take
lost
two touches
Yinka.
before passing the ball.
Because
All right. Before
Can you
we
guys
get
hear me?
Samson and Yinka. Okay, yes, we can hear you, Yinka.
All right, so I was just saying that when you mention control, it doesn't necessarily mean first good first touch, and having a bad first touch or having a good first touch. It basically means knowing when to do certain things at certain times, like knowing when to play a first time pass, or knowing when to control and turn immediately, or knowing when to take a certain body shape before even receiving the ball. I think that one player in modern football that perfectly describes, what I've just said is Rodri of Man City. Before even collecting the ball, he has already taken a certain body shape, knowing fully well that he knows what he wants to do next as soon as he gets the ball. Sometimes he's always scanning around to see what's going on, to see the players moving around him. And I think that's all part of awareness, and that's very important if you want to excel in a role like that.
All right, going away from that, I think something else we need to talk about is it might sound a little controversial, but and this time around is it's about the English Premier League and the overused phrase of the most competitive league in the world. But considering what we have going on in that league this season, we have a Liverpool side that is almost running away with the trophy. Ika, based on what we have at the top of the Premiership log as early as March, would you agree with the overused phrase that Premier League is still the most competitive league in the world?
I mean, I think it's hard to make that argument based off this season's, based off what has happened in the Premier League this season. The only thing that fans get to look forward to at this stage of the season would be possibly the Champions League race or race for European sports. As far as I'm concerned, the Premier League winner already knows themselves. We're just waiting for them to be officially crowned. The three teams that will be relegated already know themselves. We're just waiting. In fact, one of them is already official. It's been official for weeks now, say 4 or 5 weeks. For a team to be relegated since March day 28 or thereabout. Ipswich and Leicester will join them. We're just waiting for it to be official. And if you're saying that a league is competitive, you would expect that there would be a bit of a fight for who wins the league, especially at this stage of the season. Even if it's not going to go down to the last day, you'd expect that just like last season or 2 seasons before, it would go down to, a couple of days or a couple of match days before the end of the season. Same goes for the relegation battle. I mean, back in the days in the Premier League, you have relegation battles going through the last day of the season and teams doing calculation. You're monitoring one game in one venue while you're watching another one in another venue. I remember when Man City won the league in 2012, QPR were still,
That
trying to survive relegation. They had their mind
Definitely.
on that. That's the kind of
That
competitive.
presented the great Aguero moment.
Do you get? So that's the kind of thing that I mean when you say that a league is competitive. But what we have in the Premier League this season does not really suggest, competitiveness, or does not really suggest that, the competition has been great this season. Liverpool, we've all known that Liverpool would win the league since February or thereabout. I also think that Arsenal should have posed more of a challenge to them if we're being serious. But even though their fans will point out referee decisions for their misfortune this season, but I just think that it's because they were not competitive enough. They lost certain points that they shouldn't have lost. You have a Man City that is not doing anything this season. Chelsea are out of sorts. We don't even know what Chelsea. Man United are actually battling, for 14th place. So it's hard to argue that it's competitive based on this season's results.
In fact, it goes beyond this season alone because some seasons back too, at this stage of the season, we would have seen Man City with a sort of gap that no one can overcome. And
Yeah,
at this point in the
yes, I
season, we are
agree.
almost very sure Man City are winning the league. So
Yeah, it has
it is
happened a
beyond
few
this
times in
season
the past
alone.
as well. Even
Yeah.
even in the COVID year when Liverpool won the league the last time, it was almost certain since around March or thereabouts that they would win the league. And if you compare that to other leagues, for example, say for Serie A last season where Inter won the league, Inter were, you know, it was certain that Inter would win
Yeah,
the league
yeah.
since say March or thereabouts. For most of the other leagues, you don't really know who would win the league until very late into the season,
Into the
say
season.
mid-April or late April. That's when it starts looking like, okay, this is the team that is differentiating itself from the other teams. But in the Premier League, and I've been making emphasis on this season because I know that the last two seasons were a bit tight, but this season in particular has not been great. And I'm not just talking about, winning the Premier League. I'm also referring to the three teams that have come from the championship. They've not lived up at all. All three teams are going back to the championship. So they've not lived up, they've not posted any competition. And, it just leaves you to wonder what exactly the noise is about as far as competition is concerned.
Yeah, Crespo,
Yeah.
just like Yinka mentioned, he mentioned that the three teams that to to relegate are almost known. One is confirmed already, which is Southampton. Then we have
I
two
think it's
others who
definitely
are
known. It's just waiting to be official.
we have two others who are close to confirmation. Based on the subject matter we're currently discussing, do you think maybe we have to look at it is these three teams we are meant talking about are exactly the three teams that got promoted from the championship last season. So do you think that is adding to our discourse that the Premier League is not as competitive
Yes,
as we
I
think
agree.
if
I
all three
agree
teams
to
that
that school of
got
thought.
promoted last season
Premier
are
League is not so
definitely going back
competitive. It's not
this season?
competitive. At least not with the Premier League we are seeing this season. Where like you rightfully said, the three teams, Ipswich, Leicester City, and Southampton, are all going back to the Sky Bet EFL. Sorry, Sky Bet Championship. So it's and also compared to the results, the very awful results we've been seeing from you know supposed big teams like the United and Spurs. Surprising to see Tottenham Hotspur 15th on the log with Manchester United just on top. Who would have thought this would be the fate of these teams? Going to this stage in the season. So but then again, we've had some clubs that have surprised us with their position of which clubs that we never expected to make it this far in the Premier League so far. Clubs like Forest and then surprisingly Newcastle. Or would I say Forest is a surprising club there? But Newcastle third position, just about 4 points behind Arsenal, is something I would hardly imagine. But then again, Nottingham Forest, 2 points above Manchester City. Yeah, we might think Man City would easily leapfrog them, towards the course of towards the end of the season. I think this is match day 32, I guess. And this coming weekend will be match day 33. So that means we still have about 5 games to go this season. So there's a possibility of Man City securing top four. And yeah, maybe Chelsea. I don't know their fixtures. I haven't checked yet. Maybe Chelsea can attempt, can fancy their chances. Depending on the fixtures Nottingham Forest have. They are remaining.
That's the only place
Yes.
where we're having a bit of competition in the Premier League this season. It is the race for the Champions League because at the top of the league, Liverpool are very much comfortable. As much as they've been inconsistent in
Oh,
recent
the
times,
league.
they've lost points to Fulham. lost points to Everton. Even at that, they are still very much in control at the top of the league. You compare that to what is happening in Serie A, Inter dare not lose any
Now,
point at this point in time. There is a Napoli breathing down their neck.
I mean,
There is an Atlanta in close proximity. You wanted to say something, Ika?
yes, I was just going to add that you have a situation in the Premier League where the gap between Liverpool in first and Newcastle in third is actually 17 points. If you have a look at Serie A, for example, before you can see a 17
between
gap
Inter and Roma,
between first, you have to go as low as seventh. 17
Yes,
points is the gap between first and seventh. So what that says to me is that you have one team that is heads and shoulders above everybody else, and then you have a bunch of maybe about four, five, six teams that are actually quite competitive, and then
just
you have
fighting
another
the UCL
13, you,
spot.
you have another 10 teams that are just there. They don't have any ambition. They're just just doing whatever they like, and then three teams that are absolutely rubbish. So that is what it says to me. Because if you analyze the Serie A table now, you have 17 points between first and seventh. Um, Mathematically, the Atalanta in third is still 10 points behind Inter. So if Inter snoozes, Atalanta can still gain ground on them. And then you still have the
Definitely.
Champions League spot still alive. Qualification for European sports still alive. Any one of Juventus, Atalanta, Bologna, Lazio, Roma, Fiorentina can still, achieve Champions League football. And even if you come to relegation, you have only 6 points between Cagliari in 15th and Venezia in 18th. So the only team that you would say is absolutely relegated would be Monza. Empoli,
Yes.
Venezia, Lecce, Parma, Cagliari, Verona can still all relegate. And we have 6 games to the end of the season. So there's a bit of a contrast between what's going on in Serie A and what's going on in the Premier League. And I'm sure that if you have a look at the La Liga as well, you have almost a similar story. Maybe not so much
Yes.
in the Bundesliga and that Liga, but in La Liga you'd have almost a similar story. So I don't know why it is now the Premier League that people focus on and say, "Oh, this is the most competitive in the league in the world." When you have actually have better competition elsewhere.
They
Inter
are
has
doing an excellent marketing job.
Inter has said it all, and
Crespo,
So,
any
Serie
new
A.
addition before we
Well, I,
wind
I,
down
go
the
I
round up.
think
games?
Napoli does not stand a chance of you know I don't think I don't see Napoli posing much of a threat to Inter in this cruising
Louder,
to
please, Crespo.
yes. No, 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 no.
Are you sure?
It's easy
Yeah.
to say that
Now, if
because
it's
you are not an
if
Inter
it's
Are
fan
you
now.
sure?
Inter fans are pissing their pants. You are saying
no,
Napoli is
but
not
for
a
real,
threat.
Are you
Is it
sure?
not-
Napoli is a
We are pissing our pants.
Napoli
You
is
are
a
saying
big
Napoli is not a threat.
ever since the departure.
Considering Inter are still very much involved in two other competitions.
I mean, the truth is, if Napoli was coached by any other coach apart from Antonio Conte, I probably would not worry as much as I am worried now. But with that guy, he's a demon when he smells blood.
Okay,
He,
so now let me ask
he
you,
just
how
keeps
many points
going
have they
and
gathered?
going and
How
going
many points?
until
How many
you are
points have
tired of
Napoli
running
gathered
and
in
you
their
just
last
giving
five
us, oh
games?
yeah, just go, just pass. you know, just go. I'm tired.
5 games, 5 games, 5 games, 5 games, 5 games with
I think
15 points.
they've had a
How many points
considerable
did
number
they
of they
add to
picked up
their
points
15?
form
They
recently.
won against Milan. They won against Milan. They
Okay,
won against
that's better.
Empoli.
I've just had a look now. They have they
Okay,
have 3 wins and 2 draws from their last 5. That's 11 points out of 15. That's not bad. Inter has 13 out of 15. So the gap, the margin is not so much that it's
13 points
insurmountable.
different.
And with 3 point gap, and it's not like
And
we have a
that's
better
just one
FPX.
loss.
Just one loss. It's only the goals difference that we have over them. And I think there will be playoff in Serie A if Inter and Napoli ends on same points. I think that's what I've read.
Yeah, yeah.
playoff
Patrick
for the
Kendrick.
scudetto.
I can't confirm that
I
presently.
read it, so I think it was Patrick Kendrick, this commentator, I tweeted something about it and said that if both, because they have similar
So there won't be
head-to-heads,
anything
if
of
both teams
head
end
to head,
on the
anything
same
of
points,
away
then
goal
there will be a
review.
scudetto
Let's
playoff.
say the
I'm not
performances
certain of that, obviously. But not normally that used to be the rule. But I know that about 2 years
But
ago
what about
they were discussing about playoff in case teams finish on same points and with a similar head to head. I don't know if they implemented it, but I'm certain that I
think
read Patrick
in the sense
Kendrick
of point
mentions
tally
or
and
tweet something about it about
head
two
to
weeks
head,
ago.
you
I'll
can
try
now
to look for the
consider the
tweet and share it
personal
with you guys.
difference
As an Inter fan, I hope it doesn't get to that. I hope Inter wins,
for having.
straight up without having to do all this mental gymnastics.
Yeah.
But it's been a great show. It's been nice having you guys once again. I hope you guys have enjoyed it as much as I have. Unfortunately, Samson is not here to round up for us like it normally does. So guys, we've come to the end of the show. Please do not forget to support us. We really, really appreciate your support. Your likes, your shares, your comments on our social media platform, on our YouTube page goes a long way in supporting us, and would really appreciate it. So on behalf of everybody that has been part of
Bye bye.
the show this evening,
Bye.
I say good night and I say good morning or wherever you're listening from, and have a lovely day. Bye bye.